Sabeer, thank you for making it out. Really appreciate your time. Guys, let's give a round of applause to Sabeer Bhatia. He invented Hotmail.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabeer. What a career, Sabeer. 1996, founded Hotmail. 1997, exited to Microsoft. 8.5 million users at exit. Mm. Serial entrepreneur, the second wave of Indian entrepreneurs that were actually bold and created such a legacy for all the other Indian entrepreneurs like myself. Grew up in India in the 80s and 90s. Um, how has the journey been since you exited from Hotmail, and what have you been up to now? The audience would love to know that.
Great. Thank you very much for that generous and kind introduction. Um, it was a roller coaster ride to be part of the very first wave of the whole .com boom and bust and everything else. And over the last 20, 30 years, I have seen a lot of companies and ideas come and go. And there seems to be, every decade or so, this new technology that comes. And then there are hundreds of people who try something and just one or two succeed. But those one or two companies that succeed really end up changing the world. So the first wave was, obviously on the web. That was, during our time. And why was the web so special? I just had this instinct that this was going to be big one day because I was a user of the internet ever since I came to the US in 1988 when we all had a .edu account, but we used to telnet into different computers and FTP files from one computer to another. And what the web did is brought an easy user interface that allowed everyone to just point and click and get to whatever information they needed. That was transformational. There were companies at that time that were just in the business of connecting disparate computer systems, like from Unix to PCs to Macintoshes. And all of that, I thought, wow, this web just ties everything. There's no need for any one of those because this is the super, the super glue that just the user interface that ties everything together. And our idea to do the web-based email was so simple. All it was why don't we make email also available on the web? But when we did that, we actually did so many things that are now, part of trillion-dollar companies, which is the first cloud-based service. Everything is going on the web, from Figma to different kind of applications, and the whole Amazon Web Services. Everything was the simplicity of the architecture, and we just made an application available on the web. So since then, from the web in 1996, 97, 94 actually is when it all started, we have now gone through a number of revolutions. First was social media, after that, the big, in 2005, 6. Then was mobile. I mean, there was BlackBerry, but the ease of use and branching out from beyond email to your personal data, which is your photographs and your music, is what Apple capitalized on. And so, a lot of people look at technology from the perspective of what it, of the wow factor of technology. This is AI. This is this. This is that. This is mobile. I think Apple has it right because they mask the difficulty of technology and just make an emotional connection and allow uh, consumers to do things that they couldn't do before.
Mm.
Like, have your entire library of music on just a handheld device.
Mm.
They started with the iPod and then they morphed it into the iPhone. Amazing. And then the initial radio on the iPhone was terrible. Was certainly worse than the Motorola phones, but they didn't care. It wasn't the phone that people bought it for. It was your personal device that had all of this stuff, and the point and click and the UI. That's what they spent. I mean, I'm sticking to the consumer area because that's what I know. Then after that, came the whole revolution of app-based services. Uber, banking, this, that. Today, everything has become an app. And now we are at an incredible time in the history of technology, which is the AI revolution. And of course, the AI revolution people have been talking about AI, since the 1960s. But it was in 2011 that it moved from being purely software-based, deterministic, algorithm-based to neural network-based. And the big shift there was, it's not so important to compute the right exact outcome of something, but it's more important to make a decision, like humans make a decision, given millions of data points. So that is what a neural network does really well. And so when you start applying neural networks to patterns in data, you start making decisions that normal humans make, but you allow computers to make that. And then from 2012 to 2018 or 19 was on data. And then somebody said, wait a minute, language is also data. Mm-hmm. So when you start applying pattern recognition and you start tokenizing language, then you have this other aha moment, which is ChatGPT, which is, if you think about how knowledge has been passed on from generation to generation, and why are humans such a well-developed species compared to animals in the animal kingdom, it's because of language. In terms of evolution of humankind, we've seen rapid evolution in the last 2 million years, and the pace of evolution and is even accelerating now. It's now weekly. We're evolving every week. But it's because of language. And when you start tokenizing language and applying AI to language, all of a sudden you have a system that is very intelligent or seemingly intelligent, because it can, spit back an answer to you depending on how difficult a question you ask it. And that is what all these large language models are. And now, of course, they're applying this same thing to other areas of human creativity, like images and video and other things. And people are even predicting that as these large language models start becoming bigger and you start throwing and processing more billions of parameters, you will get AGI, which is really artificial general intelligence, that one day it'll be able to come up with its own idea and tell you that this is the idea that's going to change the world. But I don't think it's going to come from large language models. We're now circling in that area. But it's been fascinating. It's been an amazing journey. And I'm so glad to be alive every single day, to learn something new every day. And, we're, as a species, we continue to, stretch the limits of human imagination with using this and using things like quantum computing to solve problems that even typical computers can't solve. I mean, it's an amazing time to be alive.
It's amazing, so inspirational. AGI, ASI, people are talking about ASI now, artificial superintelligence. Moving on to another question I had. I'm sure, let me read the room. How many founders do we have here? Can you raise your hands? Quite a bit. I think people would want to know. I'm assuming I used to be a founder before I turned an investor. Um, how was the meeting with Bill Gates? How did that whole Microsoft deal happen? I know there's a funny story behind it. Would love for you to share that.
I don't know if it's funny, but hey, just a great. Um, we started negotiating with Microsoft first to do an email, hosting their email for Microsoft Network, which at that time was about 3 million subscribers big, and we'd already grown to 5 million. So that's when they came knocking and they saw these press releases that we're now 5 million users big. And every 2 months we'd say we're 3 million, we're 1 million. I'm like, they're like, how are they growing so fast? And how can they reliably provide email to so many subscribers? So that's how we started negotiating with them. But that negotiation soon turned to, let's, instead of just them hosting our email for us, why don't we just acquire them? And so I just fast forward to that story and that meeting and that interaction, and then subsequently a few months after then, and the whole deal. I met with I was invited to meet with Bill Gates on October 13th, 1997. We were first, flown into the Redmond campus, and we were fed a nice lunch and introduced as a company that they really liked, and a lot of the Microsoft people were very friendly to us, and then they took us to meet with Bill Gates, and he had this office in a very picturesque part of Redmond, but a tiny one. The vice president of Microsoft Network just introduced him and said, okay, now Sabeer, why don't you tell us about your company? And it was like in 2 minutes I was asked to give a pitch. I was very nervous at that time. So I started, giving the general Hotmail pitch that I'd given to 20 investors before, and Bill, sat down on his couch and he was looking everywhere. He was looking out the window, looking at the ceiling, but not looking at me. So I'm like, that was a little disconcerting, and but I just went on with the whole thing. And at the end of it, he had heard every little bit. So he was asking me questions about, so what if this happens? How much will it scale? What's your revenue source? Will advertising really work? And how many subscribers are you adding? And how do these Unix servers scale? And all those kind of questions. Then I knew that he was listening to every word I had said. So we have a good discussion for about half an hour, and then I was leaving the room with my co-founder and vice president of marketing. And Bill shakes my hand and says, I really like your company and I hope we can do something together. Otherwise, we like to write software too. So that was good. It was no problem. I took it in good jest. And so I walked out, and we were taken to this other conference room, and there were 3 of us, Jack and myself and our VP of marketing, and Jack and Steve had just told me, you do all the talking. We'll just sit and listen. There were 14 Microsoft negotiators on the other side.
Wow.
Everyone from the chief financial officer to the investment banking team to some lawyers to everybody. I'm like, so they made a fantastic presentation and said, we love your company. It's fantastic. And they went through, in the web-based email space, you're number 1, and there's number 2, and there's number 3, but we like you because you're the leader, you've been the first mover, blah, 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 and we like to, buy that kind of stuff, and which was all fantastic. And then they placed an offer, and the offer was for like 140 million. And luckily, our lawyers had told us, just do not accept anything. Just listen, take this data and bring it back to your board. Otherwise, you will lose out on, and this was just the last bit. I'm like, great. That was the only thing that I took with me. And Greg Maffei kept trying to tell me, okay, so is this the right number? Oh, come on, it'll make you and Jack fabulously wealthy. And I kept insisting, thank you very much. I have to take this back to my board. And I was completely poker faced, and I didn't say anything, didn't reveal anything. And Jack and Steve were just looking at me. You just do all the talking. And everybody kept trying to, get me to say something. Some body language indication, nothing, zero. So I just said, listen, thank you very much. We really appreciate this. And so I took that back, and I didn't commit to anything. But that was the first offer. And then subsequently, we had many rounds of negotiation. And I don't want to belabor the point, but I'll just cut short the whole back and forth and say, at one point, I was asking for 450, and Greg came back and said, I've had a talk with Bill last night, and the maximum we can do is 350 on a phone call. And I don't know what got onto me. There was our lawyers, their lawyers, and Jack and Steve. Everybody was there on the call. And on the call, I just said, if that's your final offer, thank you very much. I don't think we have a deal. Let's just
That's bold.
Let's just remain friends, and maybe our paths will cross sometime in the future. And this, first of all, after that, Jack and Steve just looked at me wide-eyed. What is wrong with you? I mean, have you lost the plot? And there was a lot of distraction in our company. Everybody was just thinking about the deal. Every rumor had spread that we were in negotiations, and nobody was doing any work. So that was my problem, that I couldn't motivate them. And okay, it's done. We've turned it down. And then everybody came to my office and started telling me why I should have taken that offer, that they could have bought that car they wanted to buy, that house that I wanted to buy. And even my parents deserted me. They're like, what's wrong with you? And you got to know that my bank balance at that point in time was $5,000. So for a week, I thought I'd made the biggest mistake in my life. And luckily, a week later, Greg calls me back and says, how about we meet halfway? I'm like, yeah, done. Good idea. So we just closed the deal on the phone, and we let the lawyers do the work, and that's how it all happened.
That's amazing. What a story. What a story. Thank you. I want to ask you something. So many founders in the room. You've been a founder for several years. What's something that you find founder traits? Is it one founder trait, three founder traits that are very sticky to a success outcome? So as VCs, we're in the business of pattern detection, just like you said. Is there a recipe for success for founders?
No, there isn't. Somehow, you just have to keep at your vision and your idea. Sometimes it takes years for things to click and for the timing to be right. Because you cannot, most times, I'm talking about visionary founders now. There are other folks that do great work, but they're not pursuing a vision. They have solved a problem for some customer, and then they expand on that, and they find hundreds of customers who've got the same kind of problem. That's one thing. Vision is something completely, you're looking out into the future, and you're trying to predict, and I'm sticking to only consumer software because that's all I know, or consumer area, that's all I know. You have a vision for where you think the world will be, and you conceptualize a product for that future world. And the timing could be wrong. You just don't meet the right people, the right investors, the right founding team. But you got to keep pursuing that vision because you have seen it. You visualize something, like in sports. You visualize a shot before hitting it. This way, you visualized, okay, this I think will work. And in the future, this is how consumers will respond to it. So tenacity is huge. You've got to keep going every single day. You've got to keep the lights on. You've got to keep that fire burning because you have a vision. That is, I think, and then so having that tenacity to keep going and pursuing your vision that will come true one day. Sometimes it takes years, decades. It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I got lucky with Hotmail. That was very quick. It doesn't happen that quickly. And then you've got to surround yourself not with yes men, but people who will challenge you, but believe in your vision. That is the most important, part of a founding team of people who will stick with you because you show them what you have imagined and seen in the future. And sometimes other things just fall into place because of timing, because of you run into the right people, right? And networking is part of it, and meeting the right people, having the right ideas, pursuing it, and pursuing things that have not been pursued before. Like they are just ideas, but you're like, hey, let me take a chance. So I think for companies that, in the end, change the world, you've got to have that kind of, fire in your belly at all times.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Tenacity is what you said. Interestingly, I was reading a book. It's called Einstein's Cosmos, and a journalist asked Einstein, "What's the You're such a great scientist. What's the formula of success?" So Einstein said, "If success is A, the formula is X plus Y plus Z. X being work hard, Y being party hard." And then he stopped. So the journalist asked him, "Well, what's Z?" And he says, "Keep your mouth shut." But moving on, we also have a lot of investors in the room. You've probably been through hundreds, if not thousands, of investors in your career. Is there a founder pattern recognition for VCs? How do you see a good VC? How do you see a good investor? What are the qualities?
I think, once again, there are all kinds of VCs. There's VCs, there's PE funds, there's late stage, early stage, risk averse, people who want to fund growth, people who don't want to take the risk in very early times. And then there are those that you just have a conversation with and they get what you're trying to do. And, you see eye to eye because, for example, right now we're living in very crazy times. I mean, nobody could have predicted this, that stock markets will fall by 10, 20, 30%, or suddenly all supply chains will be disrupted, or climate tech will no longer be like, a good buzzword in the current administration. Everything is uncertain right now. In uncertainty, too, sometimes you can find some opportunity. But if you can somehow predict user behavior in the future, and somebody buys into that vision, an investor as well as you, and you see eye to eye, I mean, then the rest is like they have also seen that vision that you have. And I think that there is no right formula. It's chemistry is very important in a founding team, and chemistry is very important between the investors and the founders as well. And some of the VCs don't stick to areas like, that they think they specialize in, like this is our area, this is our area. the world is changing so fast. All the areas are kind of
Intermediate.
merging. Like Apple was always a computer company, and then they dropped computer and said, because they became a phone company, a music company, and and that's because somebody like Steve Jobs was required to save it. I started my career at Apple and was given up for dead. I left Apple and joined a startup only because it was going nowhere. But somebody who could take a tough decision and said, we'll kill all these 16, 20 lines of business and focus on just one. And not only did he save it, he turned it into the most valuable company on planet Earth. I mean, that is pure vision. It's not continuation of the old way of doing things.
Follow up to that, you mentioned you left Apple to found Hotmail. I know Indian parents; they're quite harsh about these things. How was it for me? It was when I left my job. I was at Siemens, and one fine day I turned in my resignation, and I called my mom. It's like I turned in my resignation. She's like, "What did you do?" And I think a lot of it is also founder grit, and somehow I just knew there was a calling, and the next day I end up getting a contract from Siemens, and that started my founding career. But how was it for you when you left Apple to found this company? In those days, it was quite unheard of that you're giving up this job, and I'm sure a lot of founders are in that shoes right now.
Yeah, it was similar. I left Apple actually to join another startup called Firepower Systems, and from then Jack and I started Hotmail. It was similar, the cushy, this thing of a comfortable job and regular paycheck, but they did also understand that this was in the tech space, not a regular kind of business. And I had to explain to them that it's not a business. It's like a different way of thinking about things. They just told me to be careful, but the thing was they didn't believe any of the numbers. They had to ask my relatives if that was all true. It was surreal for them as well.
So awesome, awesome. I think we have time for a couple of questions from the audience. I guess we started the programming a little late. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear from you. I think a lot of startups start with how they get over that chicken and egg problem at the beginning of getting investment, getting off the product, and especially for B2B, the sales cycles are longer. How did you deal with that? And how did you gain your first few customers and first few investors and prove to them that you're the best product in the market?
In our case, the chicken and egg problem was just knock on every door. Everybody who said they were a VC, I would make a pitch to. I got used to making pitches. And the other part about getting the first set of customers was, in those days, it was public relations. So we hired a small PR firm and just went and met a whole bunch of journalists, had them write about made a pitch to them, showed them a demo of the product, and they wrote about it. And every time it was published somewhere in some newspaper, we'd get, our sign-up rate would go up. So initially it was like 50 a day, 100 a day, 200 a day. And then I remember one time there was an article in Business Week. Jack and myself were covered, and from 5,000, our sign-up rate per day went up to 15,000. Because of the size of... Today, all of that is replaced with social media. There's no more going to PR firms. That's the wrong way of doing things. It's like create your own set of followers and, get active on social media. Start the engagement process. And I started that last year, not knowing the power of social media. In April of last year, on my Instagram, I had 214 followers and maybe like 9 posts. Now I have 260 posts and 350,000 followers. and my posts have been seen like 150 million times cumulatively, and it's all organic. I've just been out there, and that's why this is being recorded, and I'm like, that's the way to market. It's the new way of marketing. So I'm getting to start thinking like Gen Zs now.
That's awesome. Lior has a question for quite some time, so let's give it to
I
him.
was curious, as a deal lawyer, I'm very impressed about the price movement. I didn't even know this, the story. Was there a competing offer, or were there other elements that kind of made the price from the initial point to sort of where you ended up? Or really, there isn't a competing offer. There is a range, but kind of like 20-30% more, but in your guys' case, more than doubled it. So, is there something else?
There was no competing offer. There was just we were growing so fast that Microsoft internally had a discussion and said that if we were to do this, it will take us a year to do, by which time they will already be at 20 million. When we sold, we had 10 million subscribers. And they said at 20 million and that kind of growth rate, we will never be able to catch them.
So kind of were the only show with down and just stuck to your gun.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And I got really lucky.
So you didn't shop for any offers, and you still negotiated.
Yes.
It's a skill. That's awesome. One last question. We'll take it from anybody in the startup space. Okay, why don't you take?
AI first, no more taking 10 years, understanding your gut. Everything is shifted at this point, right? The baseline is every week, every day, new product, new capability, new model. So it's not even like humans are developing things, it's actually human with the AI is developing things, and it's an entirely different vantage point. So how would you even think about a long horizon vision when there's absolutely impossible to even maintain a vision 6 months?
No, it's vision is you see a product that has not been done, that you're working on, that you see the world using. That is vision. Vision is not strategy, not tactics, not a definitive product. It's something, and then if you have the vision, most likely you will be the first to come out with it. And that is different from solving a small problem. You are really looking at a much higher vantage point. You're looking at the whole picture. And like I said, it's not every... there are very few visionary founders, and it takes a long time. It doesn't happen, it's not like an idea that comes to you every week or every month or every 6 months. It comes once in a decade kind of thing. And it takes that much time to turn that into reality, because you're really projecting something into the future. And you're playing a lot of what if this, if that, but you still believe that one day that will happen. And the timing has a big role to play in this. In the 1999-2000 timeframe, there were 3 companies that had the same business model as Box and Dropbox, and they all failed. It's called Z Drive, X Drive, something else of that kind, because they only had the vision of putting your data in the cloud, a cloud-based storage system, if you will. What Dropbox did is it synced it with an app or a folder on your desktop, where you could drag and drop and it would sync it on its own. So that was the clever missing link. And then by the time Dropbox came around, bandwidth was becoming more available. Previously, if you had to stick one file at a time in a folder, and it would take you half an hour, 1 hour to do that, the timing was not right. And all those companies kind of failed. So somebody had that vision that one day we will, put all of our personal data in the cloud and be able to access it. That is a vision. And so if I guess the founders of X Drive and Z Drive had said, maybe the timing is not right, but we'll keep plugging on, and had stayed on for another 8-10 years, they would have been, So it takes a long time because people's habits don't change quickly. People change very slowly. You may have a vision, but it takes a long time for people to fully convert over. And in B2B, it's even worse. I mean, I met some company that say they're still slowly migrating from Windows to Windows something else. And, it's... So big companies are notoriously slow at migration. Consumers, much faster. But consumers, it's hard to get money out of them. So you've got to begin with some level of free and then make it freemium and then get them to part with $1 or $2, and then you make it up in volume.
That's amazing. All right, everybody. I think we're on time now. Let's give a big round of applause to Sabeer. Sabeer,
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
And
Thank you.
Sabeer is an open networker. He's also here at the event. So any other founders who have questions for Sabeer, please feel free to get some time from him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabeer. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.